Anchors, of course, are a critical piece in achieving this goal. So let's get into the details of what an anchor is, what they do, and the business opportunities that surround them. In this session, we'll hear from leaders from Bitbond, N-Tokens, and Cowrie Systems. Boris Reznikov is back to moderate this session. Boris, the floor, or shall I say the table, is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you, panelists, for joining us, and thank you for everyone at home who's listening. Anchors are a critical part of the Stellar ecosystem. We've talked about them a lot over the course of the conference. For anyone who is not familiar, just a quick reminder, anchors are the fiat on and off ramps that connect the Stellar network to global financial systems, and ultimately are the companies that make Stellar useful and accessible to millions of people around the world. And with that, I'm thrilled to be joined today by our three esteemed panelists. We have Tomas Tejeda, co-founder and CEO of N-Tokens. We have Jarek Nowotka, CTO of Bitbond. And we have Ladi Okrodudu, COO and co-founder of Cowrie Systems. And I'd love it if the three of you could please introduce your company briefly so that everybody knows what you are focused on, starting with Tomas, please.
Thank you, Boris. It's great to be here. I was last year in Go and SDF. It was great, and it's a pleasure to be here. Really an honor. Well, N-Tokens, as you know, we are looking forward to take more access to Brazilian markets and the general public elsewhere. We are doing that by B2B growing, meaning the idea is that we want to provide access to platforms that they can grow more volume and they can grow business within Brazil. The business we're looking for and working directly to build are remittance, cross-border payments, which will work with Satoshi Pay if inclusive. Remittance, we work with Tempo and at Stellar, of course. We do all tokenization business development, and that's important to build with DStock, for instance. And importantly, reach Brazilian fintechs. Brazilian fintechs, they are going through a process of open bank and a growing market for more digital services. And we believe that they can lever a lot from the technology of Stellar.
Excellent. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you very much, Tomas. Jarek, would you like to introduce Bitbond and the work you're doing?
Hi. Yes, sure. Thanks. Thanks for having us. So Bitbond started as a lending marketplace, and then, like 2 years ago, we've been extremely lucky because we got like the first formal approval for issuing STO on a German market, like fully regulated STO, and we did it. It was based on Stellar, and essentially. People started asking us, people and companies, like how did we manage to do that? So we decided to switch our business model. Instead of lending, we focused on tokenization services and essentially turning this one-off STO that we did for ourselves and seizing this opportunity to allow others to do the same. And we've been thinking, like, what kind of clients we should be working with, and we always wanted to make an impact, and we've been thinking that one of the particular segment of clients that were asking for tokenization services and was always interested in this were established financial institutions, particularly banks, that have been experimenting with blockchains for quite a long time, but didn't have like much practical use cases. And what we brought to the table was a practical pipeline for securities tokenization. So since 2 years now, we are working with banks and building tokenization pipelines for them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Ladi.
Hi, Boris. Thank you very much for having me. And hello to everybody. So yeah, we at Cowry, we are focused on cross-border B2B payments to and from the African continent, as well as within the African continent. This has been like a passion for us, and it's something we've been trying to solve for quite some time, a number of years. And luckily, a couple of years ago, we came across the Stellar network and found that this was the ideal platform for us to build our services. And that's where we are right now.
Excellent. Well, we're thrilled to have all three of you personally and all three of your companies as Stellar anchors as part of the community. I'm also thrilled to have such geographic representation here on this panel today, with ranging from nTokens in Brazil to Cowry Systems in Nigeria and Bitbond out of Germany. So we have quite a bit of representation there. I'd like to take a deep dive in this session, exploring what it's like to run a Stellar Anchor service from the insider's perspective. And I'd like to start by focusing on the business side of the equation, because ultimately that's typically what is the driving factor in making these decisions in the first place. And so perhaps we can start by exploring, what is the particular business opportunity that you're addressing, and even more specifically, what is the business opportunity that drove you to become a Stellar Anchor in the first place? Jarek, would you like to kick it off?
Hey, thanks. Sure. So just to clarify, like our position in the whole scheme of things, we are providing technology. So Bitbond is pretty much supporting our clients in becoming anchors themselves. And since we have quite vast knowledge, this is what I like to think, in blockchain and how the technology can be leveraged, we as well provide substantial consulting knowledge how things can be implemented. So when we've been discussing first projects with one of the banks that we are working with, they primarily, and this is like what every bank starts, like the first project that every bank starts thinking about, it's pretty much key management and custody solutions. And it makes perfect sense because this is like the foundation that allows you to provide further services on top of for your own clients. And the second sort of piece that we are providing, and that comes naturally after setting up a custody, it's asset issuance. So for our clients, which are like serving corporate clients, this is a typical process that they are doing for many years now, but it's still paper-based. So essentially, digitalization of this process has tremendous impact on the performance of the whole issuance process. And obviously, these instruments that are being tokenized, these are like corporate bonds. Usually the face value is denominated in euro. So the next piece of the puzzle is stablecoin. Like to go fully digital without essentially replacing the whole cycle. So what happens with these three elements, custody, asset issuance, and stablecoin, is that a client can come open an account in a bank, can issue an asset, and can receive payments and process the bond as well, like paying out coupon payments or dividends if these are like dividend paying assets through the stablecoin. So like fully digital process. So from a business perspective, I guess the main driving principle here is that essentially this is the future. And right now, when we have just starting to actually get experience in how these things actually work, and can touch this technology from a user perspective, you can already see that there's no coming back. And like the benefits of going full end-to-end digital, like with digital tokens and crypto in general, definitely are going to transform how the finance is done. So obviously banks facing this choice either stay, because their main value is the distribution, right? That they have all the clients that are keeping money in banks. This is essentially what their capital is. So once these digital offerings will start to roll out, and then the question is who will jump on the ship and serve their customers with new user experiences and more streamlined processes, and who will lag behind. So I think like from business side, this is really, I don't want to say no-brainer, but essentially this is just a technological wave, and yeah.
Well, we also see this technological wave, and we're glad that you're helping your banking clients surf the wave, so to speak. It's also interesting to hear from you that it seems like your clients are using stablecoins and using the Stellar network not only for payment purposes, for example, but also to serve use cases that are more related to institutional asset issuance as well, and that it's a fairly versatile product offering that you're able to develop on their behalf. So thank you very much, Jarek. That's super interesting. Ladi, I would love to hear it from your perspective. What is the specific business case that you're addressing at Cowry, and how are you using Cowry as a Stellar anchor to help address it?
Okay, thank you very much, Bruce. So we have a major challenge here in Nigeria and the wider Africa as a whole, which is there's a very limited supply of Forex, and there's also limited access to global financial instruments. And for a country like Nigeria that does a lot of major importing, this means basically most of the transactions are done on a cash payment basis. And because of the limited supply of Forex in the country, it's actually a challenge paying for goods and services internationally. Getting access to those to Forex in this country can be expensive, it can be slow. We saw this as an opportunity to offer a service where trying to make these payments is relatively painless. You don't have to search for Forex all over the place. And basically, we're using the Stellar network and our ability to on-ramp and off-ramp Naira onto the network to be able to partner with other anchors in other regions, Europe, for instance, where you can make payments for goods and services, basically. So we found it's a challenge that's if we can solve, we can prove to solve, will prove to be very successful business-wise. As in, there's a lot of demand for this service right now in Nigeria, especially with most of our Forex is gotten from oil. I think about 80% of our foreign earnings is from oil. And with the oil price and the post-COVID world that we're in right now, there is a demand for for Forex outside of the government circles. And we are providing that over using the Stellar network and partnering with various anchors in various regions, basically.
Got it. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you are leveraging the Stellar network as a portal to facilitate payments both into and out of Nigeria, encompassing not only B2B, but also likely P2P payments as well.
Yes, yes, exactly. Correct.
Great. Tomas, would love to hear from you in terms of what nTokens, what particular business case nTokens is addressing, and what led you to become an anchor on the Stellar network.
Well, the particular business case, and it's a bit of no-brainer as Bitbon was see, is friction. It's very hard to move money, especially cross-border. It's hard, it's expensive, it's slow, it's complicated. So there's unmet demand for digital services in payments in Brazil. And in order to do that, in some cases, it's more like in case of remittance, maybe it's the spread or just the cost of it. But in some cases, as an exporter for small exporters, it's simply impossible to do. And there's people that would be willing to export more, and they do not reach the market. We also have a big number of unbanked people in Brazil, with a gig economy in Brazil, which is very big and very relevant in terms of economic size and number of people involved. And they're simply not able to have a bank account or to be able to receive payment for their work. And in that term is very no-brainer. There's people willing to do business and there's no wait for them to do business. So if we provide means that it happens, in some case, we have to provide more efficient, as in remittance. But in other cases, it's simply providing the means for people to do business. Then there will be business where there are not. So we believe that whenever you make it possible for economic agents to start a new business, new relations, and make profit, it's a good business. Not exactly the same way you collect in different scenarios, but the business case, that's it. It's to remove friction from the market, and let it grow.
Yeah, that's very much aligned with the ethos of the Stellar network in general, which is to remove the friction that's inherent in cross-border payments. So we're happy that you're working on that with us. I'd like to focus for a second on business models behind being a Stellar anchor. Jarek, let me back up for a second. If you rewind a year ago, one of the main components of the business models behind stablecoin issuance was, of course, to earn interest on the monetary base. You fast forward to today, interest rates have crashed around the world to deal with the pandemic and the economic circumstances that it's created. Jarek, Bitbon works with banks in the Eurozone, in Germany in particular, where, of course, you're in a negative interest rate environment. How have you found that to impact the business case behind some of these stablecoin issuances and being an anchor in general?
Yeah, thanks for asking this question. So it's kind of interesting to see because you can see what happens, for example, with other stable coins that are issued on Ethereum. And most of them, like at least these are that are popular, are tied pegged to USD, and obviously the yield on DeFi protocols it's quite substantial. So it's easy, at least with if you accept USD exposure, to earn interest using crypto native protocols. And of course, for Euro, it's not the case because there is no equivalent in terms of a stable coin that could support this kind of use cases. So what we are hoping to see actually is how converting Euro to digital asset before CBDCs happen can actually impact these all hungry investors for yield, like looking for yields. If euro-based stablecoin can actually make an impact and start to be visible on decentralized protocols. So obviously we are like reaching a bit away from sterile use cases, but what we hope as well is there are already some applications that integrate with Stellar quite well, like decentralized exchanges, and obviously Euro stablecoin present on an exchange can be a part of this yield earning product.
Makes sense. So it sounds like you're looking for other venues to generate yield on this asset. Great. And I'd like to turn to both Ladi and Tomas and ask you how you've thought about the business model that you employ in your Anchor service. Are you monetizing primarily on deposit withdrawal fees? Are you monetizing primarily on the spread in the Forex conversion? Or are you using a different type of business model to support this business? Ladi?
Thank you. For us, we are monetizing on the spread. Deposits and withdrawal fees are pretty negligible. So we just try and monetize on the spread, about 1%, nothing too crazy. But we believe that the volume will make it profitable at the end of the day. Got
it. So you want to make the barriers to entry as low as possible for users,
yeah,
and monetize on larger volume.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Tomas, would you agree, or do you see it differently?
No, I agree that in the business that Harry does, I think it's a great model to be able to be more fair. You take a spread, it's more transparent. In our case, we're not dealing directly with retail, so we are not putting spread, and also we are not working with, let's say, remittance with withdrawal fees. What they do is that we see, depending on each business and each platform that we partner with, how we add value, and we try to share this value so that it is transparent to the customer how much they are paying for the service it is being provided. And we don't add a cost for the customer that it doesn't see. So for us, it's more like, okay, are we reducing the spread in a remittance-based business? Okay, how much are we reducing the spread because it's more efficient? Okay, how can we share this spread that's benefit for the client? Or in other cases, are we facilitating a business that are not there to begin with for a platform that is offering a service for a gig economy or for exporting? If you're offering a service that is not there and someone is charging for the service, we can obviously talk about commission sharing and something like that. But definitely, we're not having as a primary source of business revenue the interest rates on deposits. Maybe it's not feasible because of the current rates of interest rates around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we work with many different anchors around the world, and it's fascinating to us to see the different types of business models that are employed to serve the various use cases that the anchors address. Now that we've spoken a little bit about the business opportunities that you're addressing and what types of business models you're utilizing to make it a viable business, I'd like to spend some time focusing on a few specific areas that are part and parcel of running an anchor service. So, of course, there's the technical piece. How do you integrate onto the Stellar network? How do you integrate with the bank partner on the other end? How do you manage compliance? How do you manage shifting regulatory headwinds and tailwinds? How do you manage banking partners? And last but not least, how do you manage customer service as you start to ramp up your customer base? All of these things are extremely important and very different. And I'm interested to hear from the three of you, which of these, or maybe another aspect that I haven't mentioned, has posed the greatest challenge? Which of these has been the most difficult for you to manage? Jarek, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, cool. Thanks for asking. I'm laughing because I just want to tell you an anecdote. So when we started approaching integration with a bank, anonymous bank, we've been faced with a challenge. Okay, so user is sending a euro transfer, like a SEPA transfer, and we need to get a simple notification, that the transfer has happened, and in response, issue stablecoin digital assets. So simple use case, in the age of APIs, like if you have Stripe or other services, it's super straightforward to process payments. However, no, not so much with SEPA. And the first solution was proposed solution was to set up a physical Windows machine sitting in, not even in a data center because it wasn't compliant, somewhere where we would remotely FTP to this machine and download a file of transactions like once a day or something like that, and then reconcile which transactions are new, which are old, and then try to guess basically which transfers has happened and which didn't. So fortunately, we streamlined the whole technical integration quite significantly. So this is, at least from our experience, when we are working with institutions that are really like, they've been forging compliance policies for years. And right now with new technology, most of these compliance requirements are pretty much obsolete. There's really a lot of work in changing like the way of thinking about compliance and about like from regulatory perspective. This is another topic that is just getting started, that regulators are actually catching up what is happening in the digital space. And we are fortunate in Germany that it's quite progressive, that digital assets are recognized already. However, that's not the case for other countries, and definitely there is tons of challenges there. So like from technical perspective, because I'm mostly responsible for technical integrations in our products. Thankfully, like with Stellar, it's pretty straightforward, but definitely like the most difficulties and the most hurdles at the same time. The biggest opportunities are in compliance regulatory requirements.
Got it. So it sounds like compliance and regulatory, of course, are there even in progressive markets like Germany, but also dealing with perhaps legacy tech stacks at your banking partners can also present some challenges.
Absolutely.
Ladi, I'm curious to hear which of these factors has posed the greatest challenge to you. You as the COO of the company probably are the first in line to deal with some of these issues. Wondering, what has been one of the greatest challenges for you so far?
Yeah, thanks. For us, definitely compliance, regulatory and compliance. There are so many rules in different regions that we have to try and meet. We never thought it would be so difficult. We honestly thought once we figured out the technical aspects, we thought we could get up and running, but then we realized that the challenge of compliance, we really needed to get our heads around to figuring it out. So I would definitely say compliance has been the biggest hurdle for us to overcome. Luckily, we are actually overcoming it now that we've set our minds to it. So that would be our biggest challenge. Technical integrations has been quite smooth. Getting onto the Stellar network is pretty straightforward. And luckily, here, the banking environments, they're pretty, would I say, up to date with digitization. So that wasn't so much of as a challenge. So I would definitely say it was compliance has been the major hurdle for us to cross. But yeah, they're doing it right now. Yeah.
Got it. Well, it seems like you're doing it quite well. Tomas, curious to hear from your standpoint what has been top of your mind and how have you been dealing with it?
Well, starting with the easy part, let's say, it's not easy, but it goes very well, which is the technical part. And well, Jeff has a lot to do with being easy and being smooth. And Stellar is a great technology, helps a lot. It's very straightforward, even when you have to connect the different business partners. So this is very good. Of course, it's very important to be done very correctly, but it works well in general. Now, compliance wouldn't also, it's after regulatory part is solved, compliance quite comes in place. Still, the part is the regulatory part, because in my experience, what happens is that even when you have, and we have in the case of central bank in Brazil, a forward-looking and a changing regulatory to move to a more competitive and a more not really decentralized, but a more digital and a more efficient ways to do things. Even then, it's just because of the nature of regulation shifts, it's hard to predict. It's hard to say, okay, there's a good view that regulation will be pro-business, still business in Brazil, whatever. Even then, if it happens in 6 months is one thing, and happens in 2 years is a completely different thing in business perspective. And regulatory wise, this could be indifferent, like 6 months, 2 years. Maybe it's this process. It just takes because so this is part important. And also remember that we're talking about regulation in Brazil and elsewhere in general. Of course, when it's just fintechs in Brazil, is only in Brazil. But if we're talking about anything cross-border, it also involves how the regulation changes in other places. So is Europe changing the e-money license? Is UK setting new rules for stable coins? And they are, by the way, all changing this. Is CBDC coming? And if it is, how do we integrate with CBDCs? And all those things are very hard for you to cope in the sense of, okay, we can talk about it, we can discuss the probabilities, but making a business on those things, that's the hard part. And remember that since we're doing B2B, part of what we do is we cover and try to remove the hurdles for our partners who do not know Brazil, sometimes who do not have the total insight of what's going on in Brazil. So we have to do that a bit with them and for them. So we have to also not take our only local perspective, but put ourselves in the perspective of the others that are looking at Brazil. So for all those reasons, regulation is the real game changer. And I think it's gonna keep changing. Technology is far from stopping to evolve. We see on Stellar, we see lots of protocols which will be a very good change. We see key recovery. That's a huge change. There's a huge benefit that everyone should enjoy. And this will have changes in the whole chain of products and services. And this is far from stopping now. And regulation, as Rob put, has to catch up. Even if the regulator is trying to catch up, when and how they do that, being incognito, this is the tough part. But
Got it.
now the others, we can deal with that.
Yep, that makes sense. So it sounds like the changing and dynamic nature of the global regulatory kaleidoscope is one of the things that you think about a lot in terms of how to manage both in your country as well as the countries of the partners that you're working with. I'm curious to hear from each of you, from a purely practical perspective, day to day, how do you allocate your time? What parts of the business that we've just touched on between technical, regulatory compliance, customer service, partner engagement, how do you allocate your time among these factors? Jarek?
Compliance most of the time.
That's
preparing infrastructure in preparing infrastructure in a compliant way. It's a big topic. Going to meetings with like we are. In fact, I'm complaining a bit, but we are in a lucky situation because since we are working for banks, they are handling most of the heavy load, and we are simply listening what compliance has to say and just implementing this. We don't have to figure out things like how to build things in response to regulations.
Mm-hmm.
However, since we are dealing sort of in these both worlds, like from one side regulatory, like dealing with regulatory requirements, and as well like managing things so they are like usable from user perspective. We are in a lucky position where we can actually influence the regulation as well. At least in Germany, it's very open, and I can say only good things about regulatory body catching up, and they're really listening to people who have practical experience with blockchain tech. So hopefully it will move forward quite quickly, and we'll see other assets jumping on board as well, and then we'll have even more work in integrating new kind of assets.
Makes sense.
Wrapping up, it's mostly like mostly preparing infrastructure in a compliant way, definitely.
Right. So if you're not thinking directly about compliance, then you're helping your banking clients, helping to enable them to meet the compliance requirements that they face in their markets.
Yeah.
Ladi, you mentioned previously that compliance is top of mind for you. Is that what you spend most of your time day to day looking at?
No, not really. My day is spent mainly managing our clients. Onboarding clients in a compliant way, managing current clients. There's a lot to do with rates. Rates fluctuate a lot in Nigeria. So there's a lot of communications about rates, status of their transactions, requesting KYC documents for clients who are onboarding, or just answering inquiries that customers mainly have, or trying to acquire new clients. So most of my days spent around client management. Luckily, we have a very competent technical team, so we never really have technical issues per se. So it's mainly about managing customers and developing business out, fleshing out newer services, and looking to the future, basically.
Got it. I'd love to explore this a little further. I think this is a really interesting point, which is there's two aspects that we strive to streamline here. One, of course, is the technical interoperability or the technical integration between two partners. That's something that the Stellar network directly seeks to streamline. So any one of the anchors we have represented here should, through the Stellar network, be able to seamlessly connect with the other from a tech perspective. Of course, today there's still some bilateral agreements that need to be entered into on a business level between anchors. And Ladi, I'm curious from your perspective, do you foresee a future where both of these things are fully streamlined and almost completely automated? So not only the technical interface between anchors, but also on a business level? Do you see a world where this could be largely automated?
Yes, I do. I do believe it's not too far away. But I would think there will be need for some sort of anchor verification program. Right now, it's easy to just come on to the network and be an anchor. So, but if there's a way of verifying anchors that are regulated in their regions, that have gone through all the necessary things that need to be done, yes, I think it's very, very possible, because the main friction between partnering with anchors is making sure you have the right anchor that can do what he says he can do, or they say they can do, and are regulated and are legal entities. So I do believe that with some sort of anchor verification program, it's very possible that we will, that day will come.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. How can we make the lives of our anchor partners easier so they can better serve their own customers? Tomas, what do you spend most of your day thinking about?
Customer service, especially considering that we're servicing platforms, and they always have to be on top of the best information. Do they have all the information they need to develop their business? Do they have all the inputs on the technical side and integrations that are going on? So it all starts there. For us, it has to be really top. And that's something that we can be more active on, so we can make sure there's no gap and they really are on top of everything. Now, on the regulatory side, that, as I said, it is very important, it's critical, but sometimes it's more a reactive part of my day, because it can happen that there's a public hearing on changes on FX rules in Brazil, but the public hearing is out. It won't be any change in the next few weeks, and then suddenly a bunch of new rules are out, because that's how the regulation resolves and issue new rules. So that is something that, when it comes, it's critical, but it's less programmable. It's something that it's not something that you can make your whole day around it, because it's not always like that. The technical part also involves around customer service. We're always trying to improve integration, the SAPs that everyone who deals with Stellar knows very well, but there are protocols that facilitate automating the conversation between business. And they help a lot in making compliance easier and making transaction information easier. So it's always good to be on top of new protocols and see how we can automate process of doing business. But this is something that, in part, there's some developments we do on our own, but usually it's something always integrating with the customers and that part. So mainly, it's always focusing on how can we make sure that the platforms that are using ours and their customers are having top service and have best possible service solution that it is. And from there, we can start looking at other things.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, and that echoes a lot of the same thoughts that Ladi put forward as well. It's interesting to see the common threads between anchors in different parts of the world. I'd like to shift now to take a look at some of the questions that the audience has been asking. One of them actually coincides with a question that I had in mind to ask you as well, which is, in all three of your companies, either directly or indirectly through your clients, are representing fiat currency in a digital format. In some areas of the industry, this is known as a stablecoin. In others, it has different meanings. But in any case, I think most people would agree that we're at the inception stage of this. A lot of the action is between the banking system and the digital rails, the interaction and interface between those two systems. Ultimately, do you foresee a future where stable coins or digital representations of these fiat currencies are part of the economy to such an extent that the interface between the traditional banking system is no longer as necessary? And if so, what do you see as the future of traditional players in the financial infrastructure? Jarek?
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess we have a short time for stable coins before CBDCs come along, and they'll essentially serve this like universal national currencies purpose. But I think like the main role for banks in this developing digital tokens age is simply distribution. They have relations with clients. Probably it won't change that much. And essentially by providing digital services to their clients, they will just upgrade the whole experience. Of course, we have like the whole area of possibilities to unlock new types of financial instruments and new types of finance, like what we can see in DeFi, for example. It's happening already. So yeah, it's just a matter of on-ramp, I think, and stable coins as issued by banks is just one type of on-ramp, and everything ends up in digital form.
Yep, that makes sense. Ladi, how do you see the role of banks and the traditional financial system looking like in 3 to 5 years from now?
Yeah, similar to Jarek, I feel it's good. It's a channel. It's a distribution channel. I think they'll open up more to fintechs to offer services to their customers. I think I'm already seeing that in Nigeria. A lot of banks are open to having third-party services being offered to their customers. So I think they realize that there's an openness to technology that they can't really avoid. So I think they'll just end up playing in an open way.
Excellent. Tomas, curious to hear your thoughts as well.
Well, I think there's gonna be some more differentiation on the service that are more vertical today, and we could see some decoupling of service. For instance, do necessarily payments are so concentrated on banks as they are today? I don't think it's necessarily the case, and I don't think it's a threat for banks. If fintechs can provide services that are more efficient to banks in terms of payments, for instance, there will be more business for banks to finance. So not necessarily as a threat. I think that the more efficient the market gets, and it will get as it gets more digital, the more business there will be in the whole. So let's say if you're talking about, okay, so half of the payment system services are provided by fintechs in a few years. The overall will be much more than double the current market. So business will have, banks will have lots to do, for instance. Now, to the question of CBDC, this is very complicated because it's unclear right now how CBDC would play along. Would CBDC be something like a synthetic stablecoin, but let's say regulated by central banks? Or would be something that banks can issue as they issue money in terms of fractional deposits? Or is it something more radical, like central banks would be accepting accounts straight from peer-to-peer or individuals? I don't think it's going to be likely the case. So the idea here is that even if there are CBDCs and banks are doing more services, and services of payments are provided by fintechs, there's much more layers of possibilities. And also, if you think of CBDCs, they cannot be servicing everyone everywhere. It's just like thinking that central banks are doing ATMs. It's not, you know. ATMs are being done by private business, I think, everywhere. I would guess everywhere. So, and it's not something that central bank, no, I'm the only one who can print money, so I'm the only one distributing money. It's not like that. There's
Well,
lots of
I'm sorry to interrupt, Tomas. We are out of time, but I really appreciate all three of you joining us today and sharing your insights. And for ultimately connecting the Stellar Network to the global banking systems that you each represent. And we're really excited to see the cost-efficient financial services that you're able to offer the world as a result. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Boris.
Thank you.